everyone, it's me Druvita Dhamelia. Today we are celebrating Teachers Day in Department of English Maharaja Krishna Kumar Singh Ji Bhavnagar University. Today in Teachers Day I am going to teach about Fire and Ice poem by Robert Frost. Introduction of Robert Frost. Robert Frost was born on 26 March 1874, one of the most celebrated poets in America. Robert Frost was an author of searching and often dark meditation on universal theme and a quintessentially modern poet in his adherence to language as it is actually spoken, in the psychological complexity of his portrait and in the degree to which his work is influenced with layers of ambiguity and irony. His work was initially published in England before it was published in the United States. Known for his realistic depiction of rural life and his command of American speech, Robert Frost's work was highly associated with rural life in New England. The poet often used the New England setting to explore complicated philosophical and social themes. As a well-known and often quoted poet, Robert Frost was highly honored during his life presence on the earth, receiving 4 Pulitzer Prize. Fire and Ice poem, in which poet try to identify two human emotions which can lead earth toward the end. So now I begin with this stanza and reading to the poetry. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. Poets start with some people say world will end in fire, but some say world will end in ice. Next stanza. From what I have tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. Poet says that I don't know how was my experience, but I want to stand with a fire, who believe that fire can end to the world. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate. But if world will end twice, then I also want to stand with those who believe that ice also can be reason for the end of the world. To say that for destruction ice is also great and would suffice. If we want to say that ice also be reason for the end of the world and it is also sufficient to destruct the entire world. So in this poem, poet tried to say that fire and ice can end to the world, not scientifically, but poet try to identify two human emotion which leads earth toward the end. Scientifically also is proven that world will end one day, but poet feel that its reason desire hate. Desire stand for the fire and hatred stand for the ice. Fire and Ice. Fire and Ice is a popular poem by American poet Robert Frost. It was written and published in 1920, shortly after World War I, and probability of two different apocalyptic scenarios represented by the poet. In this poem, poet identified two emotions which leads earth toward the end. The speaker believes that fire to be the more likely world ender of the two. In second stanza, poet says that if world will end twice, then ice also can be reason for the end of the world. Ice also be sufficient for the end of the world, and perish it can be destroy the world. We find themes like in this poem hatred, desire, and the end of the world. Second theme we find like choice, and third one is destructive power. Hatred, desire, and the end of the world. How could this theme relate in this poem? We can say that by fire, the speaker actually means desire, and from the speaker's limited personal experience, the speaker want to stand with a fire as a fire. Fire stand for the hate, lust, too much greediness, selfishness kind of things we can put in a fire. Fire once begin, it cannot stop without destructing everything. As in human emotion, if one became greedy and selfish towards his life, it can lead toward the end. Once people get something, then his greed or their greed became more and more. They want to achieve more and more without thinking about other people. Ice work differently from the fire in his prediction. Human destruction doesn't have to be bright, noisy, and violent. Hate can spread in the more subtle way. I stand for the stuckness, emotionless people like insensitivity. I doesn't represent coolness and coldness, but it stand for the stuckness and insensitivity of the people. If people became like I don't care about anybody and it became like a stone hearted, then it's lead earth towards the end. We find symbolism in this poem like symbolism is used for the signify some emotions, some theme. In this poem we find that fire stand for the hatred and ice stand for the hatred and fire stand for the desire. Desire is a Fire is a symbol of a desire and ice is a symbol of a hatred in this poem. Personification. In this poem we find personification like a personification is used for the give human qualities to the things like in this poem fire and ice is capable of destruction, therefore the poet personifies fire and ice by giving them a mind which is capable of destructing earth and anything. Conclusion. At the end we can say that there is a two things or emotion which lead earth towards the end. It is not about scientific reason but the human emotion. As a fire once began, it cannot stop without destroying everything. Same thing apply for the desire. Once you start to fulfill it, it increases day by day. I stand for the stuckness, insensitivity and hatred. When one start to behaving like koi farak nahi padta, then world will end one day. So in this poem, poet tried two human emotion which leads earth towards the end. After the Second World War I, people of the earth became like cruel and insensitive towards other people. They are thinking about just their own life. They became selfish towards the life. Then poet see the situation and try to identify the human emotion which leads earth towards the end. Thank you.